Just a little bit about myself. I am in the community, the Highland Milford area, and this topic that we're going to share with you today is an educational topic. It's a very timely topic. We're going to talk about and get into the details about long-term care and really understand the truth about long-term care. There's a lot of myths out there, and often people feel like it could never happen to them. And we find that many of us might even experience it, even in our own families. So who is RAM Insurance and Financial Services? We try to educate our clients as well as the community on a variety of financial topics so that they can prepare and have a financial strategy that will improve their lives and also plan for the future. So here's some facts. We're talking about the truth about long-term care. Do you realize that between the age of 18 years old and 64 years old, 40% of Americans are using or need some form of long-term care? That's pretty significant. Well, let's look at the number 65 and over. Well, about 70% of people 65 and over are utilizing some form of long-term care. 2020, statistically, there were 12 million people receiving long-term care. And we know that as the baby boomers age, that number is definitely not going to go down. The number will go up. Now, we're going to talk about some long-term care protection strategies. We want to think about what can we do now? Well, first of all, we know that long-term care insurance is expensive. I don't know how many of you who are participating in this educational workshop is experiencing someone in your family that needs long-term care, or perhaps they know, a family member, or a person who might be a friend who has a family member experiencing long-term care. So it's important as we go through this presentation that you take notes of different things that you can do right now that may improve your situation for the future. I skipped a slide. This slide here is a very important slide, and why long-term care, the truth about long-term care is so important for me. As you can see on the left side, there's a younger picture of myself. It's a picture of myself and my dad, and a younger picture of my dad. At this time, this was before my dad even retired. He was still working for Ford Motor Company, and no one would have been able to predict that someday he would need long-term care. And so a little bit about our family. I grew up in a family of 8 children. Mom stayed at home, dad went to work, and he worked for Ford Motor Company as a mechanical engineer for 32 years and retired. And retired somewhere warm in the South, and had done some really good sound planning. And one of the plannings that he had done is purchasing long-term care insurance, because with him purchasing long-term care insurance, when he got a little bit older and needed that care, he ended up at a facility. And as you can see, the picture here is my favorite picture because it's my dad, and this is my uncle, who is his brother, who's 90 years old, and my aunt. And look at the beautiful facility. But this would not have been possible if he had not purchased long-term care insurance, because it's very expensive. He spent 9 years in assisted living facility and he passed away in 2020. So when I share the information, it's not only my experience, but it's actual information to help you be able to plan for the future. So now let's talk about a little bit about what's happening with our population today. Now, we realize that approximately 10,000 baby boomers are turning 65 every day, and that trend is expected to continue. Matter of fact, in 2030, the baby boomers will have all turned 65. And here we are in 2021, and that's not really that far off. But the alarming thing about that age is that there will be about 3.5 working age Americans. Now, you might have heard on the news certain things about Social Security is going to be exhausted. There will be more people receiving Social Security than will be paying into Social Security. But along with that, we will have an aging population who will begin to need long-term care. And remember, if you don't remember anything from this presentation, right now there's 12 million people receiving long-term care, and 70% who are 65 and older have some need of long-term care. So along with our aging population is going to bring about some challenges. Matter of fact, for example, the United States Department of Health is letting us know that 70% of the people are going to need the long-term care service at some point during their lives. And we're going to find out, well, Brenda, how do I find out how to plan? What things can I do right now to plan for the future? So when we look at about, understanding long-term care, we want to explain what it is, first of all. And we want to talk about the cost that's involved. And then what are your options? There's only a few options to pay for long-term care, and we're going to discuss each one of those. So what is long-term care? Well, long-term care is the inability to perform daily activities. What are some of those daily activities? Well, some of them are things that you and I take for granted. I woke up this morning and I dressed myself. I bathed myself. I was able to feed myself. Well, when we reach a point that we can no longer do those activities and we need care for the basic needs, that's when we need long-term care. So let me give you an example. I go in the hospital because I have a stroke. Well, while I'm in the hospital, they give me some skill care to rehabilitate me, to help me get better. What happens if I don't get better? Well, what happens is I begin to need basic care. I no longer need skilled care for professional. I need someone to help me with just those basic activities, daily activities of life. So here are some options. Assisted living facility is the ability to live in a facility, but you have some form of independence. You need some help, but you can do some activities. What about home health care? Most people want to be at their home. I know when I get sick, I really want my pillow and I want to be home in my own bed. So home health care is another option. Most people can be independent when there is some assistance that is given to them, for home care right in their home. And we're going to talk about how we can make that happen. Respite care. If you've ever been a caregiver, I was a caregiver for 9.5 years. And even though my dad lived in a facility, I was the one primarily who went back and forth. I live in the state of Michigan, just like you all who are on this, participating in this workshop. And so my dad lived in South Carolina, so I did a lot of traveling. Not easy. Respite care is important. That's all built in, and we can talk about how that can happen. Skilled nursing care, that allows a person to continuously work on maybe some type of ailment or some type of daily activity that's difficult for them to see if they can improve. Now, let's talk about the cost of long-term care. If you take a look at this, the assisted living is less expensive. But remember, if you reach a point where you can't go to the dining room and feed yourself, then you're not going to be in the assisted living facility. If you reach a point where you can't get and use your walker to go and take care of going to the facilities by yourself, then you're probably not going to, they're not going to keep you in the assisted living facility anymore. Or if you reach a point where even though it's difficult to take a shower, that you have to walk in and you can't push the wheelchair in it anymore, then you're not going to be in an assisted living facility. You will end up in what is considered to be the nursing home. A nursing home, the average, national average is $100,000 a year. That could eat up a retirement savings so quickly, you can't even imagine. In Michigan, the average is about $90,000. So a little bit less. I mean, we have some places in California who's higher, New York, Utah, Missouri. But at this time, I also want to give you a story that maybe many of you remember. Who can tell me who Christopher Reeves was? Superman, I remember. It was a popular movie. And what happened? At the age of 42, he actually had an injury on his spinal. He fell off the horse. And that's 42 years old. And the reason why I'm sharing this story is it's very expensive. So Christopher Reeves, being a movie star, would you not think that he made a lot of money? Absolutely. But even Christopher Reeves, Robin Williams did a benefit in his behalf to raise more money, because at 42 years old, you're quite young. And if you had a spinal injury and you're paralyzed from the waist down, there's a lot of things you can't do, right? So that care got to be pretty expensive. And he died at the age of 52. So for 10 years, he needed that care. So planning early is very important. And we used to think of long-term care as being a nursing home. No, it's not. So we already talked about assisted living. We talked about home care. And we already know that younger people are experiencing the need for long-term care as well. So what are your options? You might be saying to yourself, okay, we know that there's going to be a problem. We know the baby boomers are getting old. We understand supply and demand. What do? How do we prepare for this? Well, very few people can do this. However, it can be done. And why I say that? There's pros and cons to every decision we make. You could self-insure. So we already talked about the national average. If we're only using home care, it's going to be the least expensive. But that means that we can do certain things. We just have trouble with a few things. And maybe we could self-insure that. But what if our illness progress to the point that we can do even less? And now we need an assisted living facility. Even at $40,000, whatever your pension is, whatever your retirement benefits, you can see that it's going to cost a lot of money. But then if we need a nursing home, it's going to be pretty expensive. So self-insure is an option, but be prepared to have a lot of money, okay? The next thing is long-term care insurance. And I don't know if you want to, in the chat, I can't see all the chat, Mara. So if you can just kind of help me, there might be some comments, and I want to acknowledge those as we're going along because we have 7 participants, and that's commendable. Do you see anything in the chat that you can read?
No.
Okay. All right. So now we're talking about what else could we do to help us prepare? And we're going to talk about long-term care insurance. Now, there's many types of long-term care insurance. You have the traditional, meaning that you purchase the long-term care policy, you pay, and it's better to buy it at a younger age. When I say younger age, for those of you who are younger than 50, you might think that's younger age. Yes, 50 is younger age, because usually you're still a little bit healthier and you're able, 45, 50, you're able to qualify, because you have to qualify to get the policy, first of all. And you pay throughout the year so that if something happens, then it triggers the claim, and then the policy will pay for your care.
Yeah. I don't mean to interrupt, but there was a question. Is there a video we can view?
Yes, we are going to stop at this point and let's view a video. That's a good thing, because I've been talking so much. I had a video I wanted to share real quickly. So let me stop here and we'll pick up.
If you're like most people, you probably know someone who's needed long-term care. Maybe you've been a caregiver yourself, and that has you thinking about your own situation. Will you rely on your family to care for you? Will you be able to stay in your home? What impact will it have on your retirement nest egg? Let's start by talking about your family. When the need for care first arises, you know they'll step in to help if you need it. But your needs may go beyond their ability to help. That's where a long-term care insurance policy comes in. Long-term care insurance isn't intended to replace the things your family may do for you. It simply balances the help you receive from family members with professional caregiving services. They say home is where the heart is. If home is where you plan to stay, it's important to be prepared for the day when you may have trouble managing there on your own. Whether you need help with household chores like cooking and cleaning, or personal services like bathing and dressing, a long-term care insurance policy is designed to help you pay for the care you need in the comfort of your own home. You worked hard to build a comfortable nest egg. You planned carefully so you can do all the things you want to do in retirement. A long-term care insurance policy may be a good way to protect a portion of your retirement nest egg. It makes funds available when you need them, so you may avoid dipping into your savings, cashing in CDs or stocks, or selling assets you've earmarked for other things. No one can predict the future, but we can be fairly certain that costs will continue to rise. If you're like most people, you probably haven't budgeted for long-term care expenses. Purchasing a long-term care insurance policy means you'll have funds available down the road to help pay for the care you need. It also may be a good way to protect the things that matter most. Enjoying the time you spend with your family, living in the home you love, and using your nest egg to make your retirement dreams come true.
So that was a pretty powerful video. And the reason why I wanted to share that with you, there are so many different features to a long-term care policy. Some of them offer such things as elimination period. Some of them have what is the amount that is allowed per day versus monthly amount. Some of them have what is called the home health care. The most comprehensive will have home health care, assisted living, adult care, and nursing home care. And those will protect you and protect your nest egg because the policy pays you, meaning that a lot of times, if you have paid for a certain benefit amount, and let's say the benefit is less than that benefit amount, the rest of the money is in your bank account. It's not paid out like, oh, it needs to be taxed or anything like that. So that extra amount builds up so that maybe if you need more care and the cost goes up, you're able to have that to pay for that care. Now
I'm sorry, there was another question.
Sure.
If you do not use your long-term care assurance during your lifetime, can it be used for the benefit of another?
You know what? That's a really good question. And I wish I could say yes. And usually the answer is no, unless you've put a share benefit. So let's take the case of a husband and wife. Perhaps they each get a long-term care policy, but they put a share benefit so that if one does not use it, the other one can use it. So a lot of times the likelihood of both needing long-term care is a lot less than one of them needing long-term care. So in my own situation, my husband and I purchased the long-term care insurance when we were only in our 40s. Reason why I purchased it is because of my dad. I saw what was happening to him. And of course, it was very affordable. And if I don't need it, he can take my share. If I need it and he doesn't need it, I can take his share. But I always say it's important to plan for something. Sometimes people think, well, I need all the bells and whistles, and then it's unaffordable for them. So, and I also recommend that you always have an inflation rider on it. So at 45, you can see that I would need an inflation rider at either a 3% compound or a 5% compound, because fast forward when I'm in my 80s is maybe the time when I really will need it, right? Or maybe I won't need it at all, and the spouse. But yes, that's the traditional long-term care policy. But there's other things that, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Mary Jeffrey stated, my long-term care policy gets left to my kids in cash if I don't use.
Okay, so that's actually a little bit more enhanced. And there's things that are called hybrid long-term care policy, in a sense that they give the money back. Some of them are in the form of a life insurance with long-term riders. You use it if you need it. If you don't need it, it goes to the beneficiaries. So yes, there's a lot of different forms of long-term care insurance. There's even annuities out there that might have a form of long-term care insurance as well. Okay, is there any other questions? Okay, then we'll go to the next one. Okay, there we go. I don't know why I didn't. So we talked about self-insured. Self-insured means that you're not tied to any rules on how to use the long-term care and have an elimination period or a certain amount. It's completely flexible, but you have to be prepared for the expenses of what would happen and how much it would cost. Now, no matter how well, as you can see, it says the best laid plans here. We have one spouse spends 5 years in a nursing home between the ages of 65 and 69. And then we look at the annual withdrawals the first 5 years. We have the inflation adjustment. As I mentioned, policies can be tailored to the model.
Brenda, you kind of, I don't know if something was wrong with the sound, but you kind of went out a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I moved too much and we need to stay right within the microphone. So hopefully everyone can hear me now. As I said, these long-term care policies can be tailored according to your needs, according to your amount that you can afford as well. And as I always recommend, that inflation adjustment is very important. Today, people are living in their 90s, 100. So even if you take out a plan in your 60s, you still will need that to continue as long-term care costs increase as well. Now, I mentioned that this is the truth about long-term care insurance, and you might say, well, why would we be talking about Medicare? Because so many people think that if they have Medicare, they're all set. It's going to cover their nursing home bill, or it's gonna cover their home care. Well, Medicare covers skilled care, but it does not cover custodian care. So what is the definition of custodian care? Custodian care means that you don't need a professional nurse to take care of you. It means that you need someone who might be paid only $15 an hour to come in and cook the meals for you, to help you bathe, all right? With Medicare, it requires a 3-day hospital stay, covers days 1 through 20. There's co-payment dues. I've had people who have had to have some form of long-term care, and they come to me and they say, you know, they didn't have a long-term care policy. I can't believe the bill I received, because Medicare isn't going to cover all the costs. So that's an important part that I want everyone to remember who's participating. It's not going to cover all the costs. So we already talked about the long-term care insurance. What are the pros about having something that you have ahead of time? Well, most of us, we might work a job and we plan to put money aside for retirement, and we plan and we do our best to make sure our expenses are low if we know we're going to retire. And we have assets that we call retirement funds. And we don't want to use those retirement assets, because if you think about retirement assets, they're considered to be qualified money that you deferred all the taxes throughout the years. And so now, if I have to use my retirement assets for long-term care, that could be a huge tax potential, because every time you pull that money out, you have to pay federal taxes and state taxes. The other nice thing about planning ahead for something like this to happen is the dignity. You can't put a price tag on peace of mind. And also, a lot of times, even though we might have children, which I have 4, we don't want to be a burden on our children. We want to preserve our dignity. We want to be able to maintain a certain standard of living, even though we might be aging. And we like independence. That's important. So having some form of long-term care insurance, whether it's the traditional, whether it's one that's built with life insurance, where some of the money is left to our beneficiaries, planning is the key and the important thing. Now, the cons, many people say, well, I don't know if I can afford it, the cost of premium. And then sometimes people feel it's so complicated. That's it. I don't understand it. If I don't understand how it works now, how am I going to understand how it works when I get older? So they do nothing. But when it comes to the cost of premium, it's really important to sit with an independent individual or an advisor, financial advisor who's very knowledgeable in these areas to show you how maybe this is affordable for you. So, as I said, long-term care policy, there's limitations, there's features, the type of care is specified: home care, assisted living facility, nursing home, adult care, waiting period, renewable, meaning that it's always going to renew as long as you do what? Pay the premium. They're never going to, once it's underwritten and you're approved, you're approved. They're not going to take it away. Inflation protection is pretty important. And then there's another term here called waiver premium. What does waiver premium means? Well, when you go and claim, let's say you cannot perform 2 of the daily activities, and now I need to exercise my long-term care provisions or my plan. Well, while I'm on claim, the premiums that it costs for this policy is waived. So we have talked about a lot of things today. We talked about the truth about long-term care, believing that it cannot happen to us, believing that only a few people are needing long-term care, and statistically, women live longer than men. So when my dad first went into the facility, and I was really a little like, oh, I was worried about him. And then I go back to see him, and these ladies come up to me and they say, oh, don't worry, we give your dad extra cookies. We do this, we do that. And when we sat and looked at the lunch table, he had 3 women at his table. He was the only guy. Why? Because there were more women in the facility than men. So I'm saying this for women. I don't know why it seems like we outlive men. Not in all cases, but in a lot of cases. So planning for long-term care is very important. Having protection strategies will allow you not to deplete your nest egg. So at this time, we'll ask questions. We didn't get into any legality because, of course, I'm not an attorney. There are other strategies that you put in place as you're setting up estate planning. At Ram Insurance and Financial Services, we believe in holistic planning. We believe in educating the community and educating our clients. And so when we work on doing things that's going to protect your asset and transfer it to your loved ones, we might partner with an attorney to help us. There's a lot of tax implications when it comes to retirement planning and growing those retirement planning assets. We provide tax strategies for you in that area as well. And no, we're not CPAs, but we always work and partner with those calculations with a CPA. But we do provide advice on tax strategies. So at this time, I have been doing a lot of talking, and the only thing about having a Zoom meeting is we're not together in person. So questions that you have, put them in the chat. Also, any materials that I can share that will actually improve your knowledge in this area, I'm willing to do that. So if you look at this particular slide, it has my contact information. We actually have 2 locations. The only one that you see listed here is Highland. We also have a location in Commerce on Union Lake Road as well. So what questions do you have for me at this time? So what I like to do is usually when we do this, we have people put their name on a list, they sign in, we have your contact information. We even offer you our newsletter that is very informative, that keeps you up to date with many different topics. So we don't have that form of doing that. So if you can, maybe you can put your information in the chat, your email, and we'd be happy to provide you with some additional information and even a guide.
Amanda has a question. What is a good age to start thinking about long-term care?
I would say in your mid-40s. It's a good age. Yes, you can email me. Let me give you my email. And I know you registered through the library. So also, that contact information. And as I said, there's so much information that is available to just help you make good decisions. And I want to provide that. Anything else? Yes, please use the contact information on the screen, 248-714-5102.
Dan says, thank you, Brenda.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate you attending. And sorry that we couldn't do the in-person, but I'm just glad that we could have this.
And then Amanda says, great presentation.
Thank you, Amanda. Yes, the website, we'll put that in the chat real quick. Mary, I appreciate you helping and all your good questions and being here. It makes the presentation fun when there's interaction. Okay. Well, I think that's everything, right? I want to actually thank the library while you guys are here. One of the things that we can be really proud of is that Highland Library offers many different topics. They have things just for our community, whether it's having some type of informative financial topic like this, or providing things for our children in the community. I think about all the hours that I spent at that library taking my son, who's now an adult. So we really want to thank you for being here tonight, Mara, and we want to thank Kathy for the adult services that you provide our community.
Thank you, Brenda.